Wow, this is a first, I think, for me. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. Likewise, honestly. I always say it that I think that I'm kind of biased, but I think that we have a great group of actors that participate in our program. And I mean, thank you so much for being part of it, honestly. It doesn't work without you, so give yourselves a round of applause, please. Thank you. Thank you. So, it's kind of a long title for this particular discussion, but you're here to learn a bit more about independent animation and dubbing Japanese anime, so we'll get right to it. We have an illustrious group of panelists here with us today, starting off with Stephanie. Michael. Ned. And of course we have Dave, who is joining us from Chinatown in New York City. So thank you so much. I didn't really try to say I had some issues with the last name, but we went over this in the pre-talk. So Stephanie Shea, Michael Sinter-Nicholas. Ooh, all right. Ned Lott and David Jestet. So we got those right. Okay, good stuff. So we'll start off, I guess, if you can tell us a little bit about what you do in this wonderful world of animation and anime.
Sure. Hi, I'm Stephanie Shea. I've been working. I got my start in the VO industry through anime. I started in 1998. Oh my God, that was so long time ago. And I am a voice actor. I'm in Naruto. I voice Hinata and Eureka 7. I don't know if you guys even know what these titles are. Okay. A bunch of other stuff. I also do voices for Katana in DC Superhero High. I was on Star Darlings and I was on Legend of Korra. Those are not anime. And when I started producing English language dubs back in 1998. And so I've worn many hats in that industry, from casting to writing ADR scripts to producing to voice directing as well as VO. So you can ask me anything.
Michael?
Hi, I'm Michael Sinter-Nicholas. I got started before you. I wonder, I know who's the old man on the panel here, but I started in '94, and I had just come fresh out of my conservatory for classical theater, studying Shakespeare to prepare me for anime. I got into a cattle call in North Carolina where they just happened to be dubbing stuff, and they were doing a show called Bubblegum Crisis, which I'd grown up watching, and a couple people nodded. Wow, they know it. And I ended up getting a job at the studio doing it because I was also a big nerd for audio technology. Because one day I heard a guy play synthesizers at Disney World, and it kind of changed my life. Michael Iceberg, if he's out there, you changed my life. So I got really into multi-track recording in high school. While I was acting, I went to the LaGuardia High School of Performing Arts. They made the movie Fame about it. Did you go? Oh, girl, we got to talk about what year you were there. I was probably older. 84? Oh, 80. What? Sorry, I'm sorry. I just outed. A gentleman never asks and a lady never tells. I'm sorry. So that led to me getting a job at the studio Southwind in North Carolina, way off the beaten path. They did a lot of ADR for movies, and then they got this job doing anime. I ended up getting to co-engineer so that I could backseat direct for the owner of the studio, who was a musician and didn't speak actor. But since I had training and I was part of the largest theater company in town, I got to help backseat direct. And then I was also doing voices, and that led to me opening a studio in 2000 or 98-ish. NYV Post in New York, and now I'm sort of bouncing around back and forth in the coasts. I'm still a voice actor. I'm currently Dean Venture on the Venture Brothers, and doing some anime where I can get it, and a bunch of movies and stuff. So I'm directing, I'm mixing and editing and rewriting less than I used to, and still acting. So those are my areas of expertise you can talk to me about.
And you never sleep.
I also don't ever sleep, which is why I have coffee.
Yes. And I came from San Francisco in 2000, so I'm kind of the baby, aren't I?
Oh,
Yes.
You're so cute at that age.
So I was at Disney Character Voices, handling a lot of the work there. And my first venture into Japanese animation was directing the video game Kingdom Hearts for any Kingdom Hearts fans. And then from that, went into producing 8 Studio Ghibli movies in-house. So My Neighbor Totoro, we got to kind of redo that one. Howl's Moving Castle, Whisper of the Heart, Cat Returns, and one of my favorite, Pom Poko,
Oh yeah.
which was pretty wild.
You have an Oscar for that?
What's that?
You have an Oscar? Do you have
We
one?
had an Oscar nomination for Howls, yes, and we lost. Wallace and Gromit.
Dave knows
Dave-
about
Dave
losing
will
a
talk
bunch
about
of
that.
times.
Always a bridesmaid, never a bride.
Yeah.
And then from there, I went to work with a lot of companies, Warner Brothers, and a lot of independent companies. And one day I was doing an independent animation feature out of South Africa, and I needed a really great actress to actually scratch the entire movie. And we all met, and Stephanie actually did that for a movie. Mia and the Mugu, she scratched the entire thing, and I said, I'm going to work with her forever. Because she did every voice in the whole movie.
Not in the actual release,
No, the
just
scratch.
for the scratch. Dave is laughing
Yes.
his head off, and that
Right.
all came out because I was writing the script, and then Dave and another Eric was like, we don't know how to approve this. We don't know how it's going to sound. So I was like, okay, I'll record all of these lines for the whole movie. So yeah, that's what I did.
And she was awesome. So we've been working together ever since. And then I met Michael, and he had kind of the same experiences and was able to act all these things. But then we all wear all these producing hats and voice directing hats, and so we kind of co-direct, produce, cast together.
We should make a company called Lots of Hats. Oh,
There you go.
it's his
Very
last
nice.
name.
You guys are good people to know then. So basically, all the actors here should get to know you pretty well if they want to part in your features, right? That's what it is. So we'll go to.
But I mean, it is a good example of like because being an actor is such a hard thing to break into. If you have other skills and you contribute to the production in other ways, you could be used as an actor. Yeah. I'm not saying it's a guaranteed method of getting your start as an actor, but it doesn't hurt, like.
Thank you for that. And we can't forget David Jested on the TV monitor here. So Dave, take it away.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for having me here. So I guess I'm the distributor in the room, and we're a distributor of animated features. And the distributors are basically just the studio folks behind the scenes that take films either in a finished or unfinished state, and then get them either across the finish line, or if they're finished, and onto theater screens and DVD and things like that. So I'm a president of a company called G Kids, and we release only animated features and good ones at that. And with a primary focus on foreign animation, because there's not really a huge domestic animation scene for independent animated features. Usually if you're a director and you're really good at making animated movies, you've already been scooped up by a local studio like Disney or DreamWorks or Sony. But there's still a whole really vibrant creative network out in Europe, as well as Japan with anime. We found ourselves really enamored with animation as an art form, and with the creative freedom that the directors were able to use, being sort of outside of a typical Hollywood structure. And I think that was really exciting to us. The other great thing about animation versus live action is that it's possible, and in fact fairly easy, although I guess Michael and Stephanie could take issue if that's easy to localize compared to live action, at least. And so in a lot of ways, when we see films and they clearly want to speak to a family audience here, or even just to a broader audience in America, language doesn't have to be a barrier. And I think that we've accepted the challenge of trying to do whatever we can, including create English dubs with talented actors and directors and producers to help tell those stories here and create that impact. So I think we all first worked together on Mia and the Magoo, which Ned just mentioned, which Stephanie did scratch for us all, because I continue to have a very low imagination quotient when it comes to reading scripts and understanding. It continues to be tough. Try to know my limitations. And since then, I think we've done about a half dozen or more projects together. GKIDS itself has been around for 10 years, and 9 of our animated features to date have been nominated for Academy Awards in the Best Animated Feature category, including
Impressive.
several Studio Ghibli films. When Mani was there, in the Tale of Princess Kaguya, which we now release all the Studio Ghibli films in theaters, as well as a lot of foreign films that have been since dubbed into English, like A Cat in Paris, or I'm blanking.
Ernest and Celestine?
Film was Ernest Celestine, which is a beautiful film, one of my favorites. My Life as a Zucchini was this year, which is really sensitive. And I think for our purposes also really showcases the diversity in terms of the types of stories that you're able to tell. Because I think a lot of times people think of animation or anime or other kinds of categories within animation as being strictly for families or strictly cartoons or with like big wacky voices. And I think a lot of the kinds of films we work with tend to have very grounded dramatic potential and can be funny, but are also like really stirringly artistic and really character focused.
And when we did Ernest and Celestine, Dave, who did we lose to at the Oscars?
I keep now you're testing me. I've lost so many times. I don't know, man.
Are you the Susan Lucci
Frozen.
of animation?
Frozen.
I was going to sing it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Frozen.
How do you
Oh
compete?
yeah, Frozen. That was a good film.
Bad movie.
Too soon. Too soon.
I like Frozen. Yeah.
Good deal. Thank you much. So there's all this talk about anime and distinctive looks and styles about anime in particular, as it compares to other forms of animation. Can you speak to that, any of you? What makes it different? What makes it unique compared to more standardized kind of American 2D or 3D animation?
My experience, having been a fan of anime before I got into the industry, was that they were telling stories that weren't just for kids. First of all, there was some pretty high concept stuff going on too, and action was done in a way that it wasn't done in the U.S., at least at the time, because I'm old and this was the 80s. So that got me really interested in anime as an audience. So now that I'm doing it professionally, I feel like stylistically, yeah, there are a couple different things, but my approach to it, maybe because my background is classical theater, is that the fundamentals of acting remain. I don't think there should be a sound or a style for anime. The difference is a cultural understanding. Now, I'm lucky because my mom was born in Japan, so I grew up with a lot of Japanese culture. I ate with chopsticks, I ate things with rice paper on it. My friends thought they weren't unwrapped and they thought it was gross that I was eating seaweed, but I thought it was great. And but I've learned more about the culture, so I understand why the dynamics and the behavior of these stories are the way they are. And I think there's a way to bridge that culturally, to bring it out here in such a way that it makes sense to an American audience in the way that it makes sense to the domestic audience in Japan. But it's not about sounding high or cute or anything. I think the task of being specific to the story and the character need to be the primary focus. And actually, all our screensavers in my studio in New York have this thing that's written. It says, choices greater than voices. It's not about sounding cute or sounding angry or sounding like something. It's about being a person conveying a story so the audience has an opportunity to get sucked into it with you, instead of saying like, this guy sounds cute, this guy sounds mad, which I think too often is how things get rounded off, because when you do ADR, it's really, really technical and it's granular and you break up lines at a time and you don't have casts recording together typically. So it's hard to maintain that, but I think that's the tricky task for all ADR.
I actually get really annoyed when someone says, oh, we want it to just like that anime sound, like just like sound like an anime girl, because to me it doesn't really, like, I don't know what that means. I mean, I kind of know what it means, but I'm a little offended because I think like in terms of like the approach to the work, like I don't approach it as like I'm acting different. Like I'm not gonna, I think that there is an idea of an anime sound, and it's a result of things that are not good that has just kind of created this thing. But I don't think it is like a style or a bar that you should try to emulate. I think that there has been a kind of sound to anime because when you started out, I'm friends with people who worked in this industry much longer, and the recording wasn't digital. They had stopwatches, and they didn't have any context, and
they didn't have undo.
Yes. So each take, the director had to decide whether or not they thought the actor was going to get better, because they could get worse because you're losing the previous take. So I think that there are things that make that job harder with the ADR dubbing. You don't have a context. You don't have another actor to play off of. You never get the script beforehand. Everything is a cold read. And I think that it can create a sound that people have been describing as a style in terms of acting, but it really shouldn't be a style that you're emulating. It's more of a result of when it is done badly. The other thing is that there are producers out there that are more concerned in matching the audio quality of the original Japanese seiyuu, the voice actor, than with the creating a character that is a whole holistic character and can stand on its own. So that can also be a result. I think there are definitely tropes. Tropes is certain type of voice. Like a Hinata voice is like the breathy, high-pitched voice that doesn't exist in Western animation. Also, it doesn't exist in natural life. But
Even in Japan.
right, even in Japan, it doesn't exist now. But that is a trope voice. Now,
Archetype.
Sorry, yeah, it's an archetype. So that voice exists. If you're doing that type of voice, it doesn't mean that your character is just a breathy, high-pitched voice. You still need to act. You still need to, everything that is in basic acting still needs to come out, and that's what's going to, set apart that performance versus someone else's performance. And that goes for any type of like anime archetype type of voice. There are certain things, that if you're not used to watching anime might seem weird if you get called upon to do it. Super deformed is like a thing, which is like the character suddenly becomes like shorter and fatter and cuter, and sometimes the voice changes, or sometimes the face changes and the voice changes because it's like super animated when it's that voice. That is something that is totally accepted in anime, and as an audience member, it's not weird. But if you don't watch anime and you're watching, you're like, whoa, what just happened to the character? It doesn't look like the character anymore, and why are they suddenly speaking in a different kind of voice? Like, that's something that happens. Sweat a teardrop is to show that they're worried, like that like things like that if you understand. Nosebleeds means that they're horny or they're having perverted thoughts, there's certain things that like happen in anime, but it's like, it's more, you don't treat it from an acting perspective of like, you shouldn't treat it be like, oh, I have an anime audition, I'm gonna try to sound really sing-songy, you know what I mean? Like, that's not a good goal.
And then with Studio Ghibli, they kind of said, okay, don't match the Japanese at all. Do casting based on Western, based on mainstream. And so that's how kind of that was. And then Studio Ghibli would always approve it, but we didn't have to sound anime at all on any of the work we did. So none of the high sing-songy type voices.
And I kind of think, so in the early-ish days of anime, people were just trying to figure out how the heck to even get this stuff done. It was really hard. On my first job, we didn't even have music and effects tracks and had to regenerate every footstep and explosion and gunshot and whatever. And it was really hard using MIDI sync, and that's a nerdy thing that if you want to talk about later, it means that if you do a passive audio for 3 minutes, the computer treats it as a song. You can't just look at the third footstep in a series of 20. You have to play the song from the 3 minutes ago and wait and wait and wait and wait, and then count the footsteps. And if one's out of sync, you have to figure out, was it ahead or was it behind? It was a nightmare. So all these technical problems in trying to get it to happen were part of, I think, what defined the style. Then things got better. We had better computers. We stopped using just tape, and we had digital video, for instance. No pre-roll, no waiting to lock computers. And then things got better. But I think things have regressed just a little bit. And I really want to come back to what you said about the sound of anime. It shouldn't be. I think there's been this sort of weird self-referential sort of feedback loop that's happened where people who watched anime who wanted to be in it listened to how it was done a long time ago and are trying to emulate that sound, which is not how you act, right? So, yeah, don't do that. We're trying to break above that. And actually, we spend a lot of time casting really appropriately. We hire kids to do kids and, well, not animals to do animals, but we try to cast as appropriately as possible, even to age. And that's, I think, really helping to make things sound more organic.
So to that end, what are you looking for exactly when you're casting a project? I know it differs depending on the character, but what types of performances are you looking for? What stands out amongst the many that you may receive? any of you.
Well, I know. I'll go back to Pompoko, which is all about raccoons, and it's this giant tribe of raccoons. And I always look at casting like a big combination pizza. You always want the cheese and the anchovies and the pepperoni and all the different flavors. And when you take a bite of it, you taste every little flavor in your mouth. That's kind of how casting works. So if you have 30 raccoons on there, each one has to have a very distinct voice. And so it's just, how is it memorable, even if it's 2 lines? How do we remember that particular character? And so it's really a process of contrast and acting styles that separates it. Because I know some anime, it's like every guy sounds like this, right? Every hero, right? It's that. Do our hero voice.
Young or old hero? Yeah.
Just that guy.
Young hero always sounds like this.
Yes.
There's a little bit of aspiration. That's
Not the
weird.
old hero.
I'm very experienced. I'm gonna battle this. I'm gonna take this ship to the edge of the universe. Then there's the yell. What's the Kakoi. What am I saying? What's the yell? The Hurrah! I don't know.
And so we didn't want to do that.
Did not want to do what I just did. Don't clap for it. We're trying to stun out.
I think for me, when I get auditions, I listen to them in certain rounds and passes and stuff. Like, generally speaking, for the stuff that I do, if we're talking about anime, even if we're talking about other stuff that's not anime, the voice quality and sound, like pitch, texture, all that kind of stuff, needs to be appropriate to the character. And either myself or the distributor or whoever the client is has an idea of what they want that to be. It's kind of like, when you're doing on camera and you submit a headshot. The first round is just what you look like, right? It has nothing to do with your talent. So like the first round of getting stuff is really kind of to see, like, is that a voice that's workable for the character, right? And if it's not, sorry, has nothing to do with your ability, right? And then it gets weeded down. And then beyond that, I would say for me, like if I get 100 auditions, like maybe like 20% of it is like bad or not appropriate. And then you have like another like bulk of that, the top 10% being like really stand out and good, and then all of the rest of it is totally fine. It's not bad. It's not, and it's pretty good, but it usually lacks something that makes you pay attention. Or the difference is when you're listening to the top 10%, you hear the file and you're like, that's that character. And everything else is like, yeah, that's a good read, or, oh yeah, I buy that. Or it's like every other read. And I think that's when, as an actor, you have to kind of do your own work into beyond just what's on the page, right? Because when you really make that character alive for you, then you start giving me choices and ideas that are not generic. And it's not the same rhythm for every single line that I've heard already 80 times before I got to your audition.
Are you normally taking, multiple takes of a particular character? Is that acceptable, or is strictly one take per actor? How does that work normally?
Okay.
It's about choices, right? So if you have another strong choice, put it down there. We know some casting people who will not listen. They'll just automatically deny someone, even if the read was good, if they give you 2 reads and the reads aren't that different. They're like, why did you do that? That's the same thing twice. Who are you?
I mean, that pisses me off. No, to be honest, like I'm listening to, like you just cast something, you had 1,500
I did something
auditions.
with 4,000 and I listened to every file.
And it's the same way. I'm getting at least anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 easy for every single project, So if it's a lot of time. It does piss me off. I always say if you're going to do multiple takes, you have to make a choice, right? Everything is about choices. If you're doing one read because this is what you choose, and then because you're a wishy-washy actor and you haven't made a strong choice, you're giving me a second read because you can't decide. It's not the difference between, like, if you're gonna be like, oh, I have an idea, this line could go this way and then this line could be this way, and you give me a whole second take just because you have a different idea of an inflection. All of those choices for each line need to be grounded in character. And then if you can't decide and you're doing the same exact voice, it just means you haven't chosen for yourself a strong enough decision for that character. So already that kind of, and I'm not saying for sure, but like generally speaking, when I get those auditions, they're not as strong because each take one and take two, neither of them are that committed because they haven't even committed to one performance, you know? So I would never be like, oh, you gave me 2 takes that are same and like I blacklist you forever. I would never do that. But it's a little annoying, you know? And if I'm getting auditions for you every single time and you always do that, you know, I'm just like, oh, here we go again. Just like if you don't label your files correctly.
I was gonna go there.
I spend like 2 to 3 hours every single time just relabeling files, you know, fixing stuff. And it's generally the same exact actors who cannot label their files correctly.
Yeah. But the key with multiple takes is make sure you put multiple takes in the file name, because otherwise we may never listen to that second or third take.
Or slate it at the beginning after, you know, take 1 of 3. Take
Well,
one
even then, I might not hear that part. I need
really?
to see it, yeah.
Okay. So.
And just so you know, sometimes we were talking about a studio that we know that actually has a batch process for accepting auditions and then routing them automatically without human hands into the appropriate folders for submission to the client. So if you mislabel your file, it will never be heard, and it's on you. Like, I cannot stress enough. Read the notes, read the direction. I know a few people in town and some out of town that just will flat out delete it if it's not labeled properly, or the computer won't even notice it because it was labeled wrong. So it sounds really dumb, but don't shoot yourself in the foot and not even get heard by mislabeling the file. That's the easiest thing you can do. And it's not even about being an actor. It's about being detail oriented.
And so for multiple takes, if you're going to do a multiple take, make sure it's a different character choice and a different voice. Yeah. Don't make it like, oh, this one's just a little bit this. Then now I'm not latching on to like a strong idea of either one because they're too similar and it's mushy.
And for us, the strong idea is what really gets our attention. And we've even cast people that vocally were like, are they quite the right age? But they really embody the character. We'll work with them on the voice because they got the character. And I was directing a Nickelodeon show, and we had this one actor who would just keep bracketing all her takes. And again, not making a choice. She's like, it could be like this or this or this or this or this or this or this. Those aren't choices. Those are vocalizations, you know? And they weren't grounded in an idea. They were just like, I can go up or I can go down. And the thing was, and she was like, well, it's in there somewhere, right? And the producers were like, I'm sure it's in there somewhere. And I was like, actually, I don't think it is. Because none of those takes were a choice at all. They were just a variation. And you can't really, if you plugged it in, it would sound like this one character just wasn't really listening or responding.
So Ned, you mentioned earlier that you sifted through recently 1,500 different auditions for a particular project you're working on. You listened to each of those. What was your process in terms of weeding it down to the core of what you're going after?
Yeah, so in the old days, we used to have cassettes, right? And then CDs. You still send out cassettes? Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, I was just trying to imagine the casting process with cassettes. Like without being able to click and exactly like what, you know, like you wanted to go back to hear something. Oh my God, that just sounds
for
terrible.
Demos or for auditions?
For auditions.
For auditions. Yeah.
Oh yeah. So MP3s, we love MP3s. So it's basically just, you know, I click it and I start listening, and if it's not quite there, I say nope and I throw it into the no folder. And if there's something there, I pop it in the listen again folder. And I basically separate it. And that's why the key to have multiple takes on the file name. Then I can go, oh, there's another one. I'll find that. And then I usually weed through. So let's say there's 100 on the first character. I end up having 30 in the listen again folder, and the rest I'll go into a no folder. And then I just keep narrowing it down till about 15, 10. And that's where we start really listening and putting it with the character. And plus, it's all about chemistry with the other characters. So who sounds good with who and all that kind of thing. And then pretty soon we have meetings usually with like the top 5 or something like that.
They come in, they read for you in person or in studio,
right? Sometimes
right?
we do callbacks. But my attitude is, if I have 1,500 auditions, $14.99 could be my lead actor. So I'm not just going to pick the first 10 and say we're good. And even if someone's late, like I don't listen to all of them until everyone has come in. So even if people are early, I don't listen to them until I have the whole crop.
So then it brings me to the idea of the demo and how this factors in at all, if it does. For as casting directors, when you're listening to actors, do you take demo submissions? Do you listen to demos in terms of part of your process, or including that in part of your process?
Yeah, I get demos emailed to me all the time, and I'll give them a listen. Sometimes I'll share them, like with Stephanie. I have an office manager in New York who manages our talent database, so I'll send them off to him, and he'll add people. You need it, I think, at this point, especially now that you don't get to go into the room without it. And if you're not established in VO already, then you need something to prove that you should be able to get in the door. Also, even if I trust that you're brilliant, I don't know how to use you unless I hear a range of what your voice does.
And plus, I think with some of the ancillary characters that we cast, we need people who can do multiple voices. So I know demos are really helpful when we need, we just need somebody with a variety and a lot of different types of things. And that's where the demo really helps us. But I think these days a demo is really for getting representation, because I know most agents will say, no, I'm not going to listen to you until you have a demo. So
It's like the first line of defense in terms of us figuring out what you're about, what is your thing, so if I'm casting and not going through agents, then I'll definitely want to hear a demo before I even send out auditions, because I'll listen, like Ned, I listen to every single one. And if you're like really good at like tough girls, I'm not going to send you the fairy princess audition. I mean, I'm sure you think you can do it. and maybe, you can do a decent shot at it, but I'm trying to make it so I'm not listening to, I'm trying to only send you the ones that are really right for you. So that I just coughed at the mic intentionally.
We'll remix that. It's okay.
Right. So yeah, you definitely, I think it's helpful.
Also, just understand, I mean, I'm sure all of us are professionals in this room, but we got a lot of people who want to be who are fans of the genre, and they want to be involved. So they'll just be like, I want to do it. And that's great. And maybe they're even talented. But I think being able to produce a demo and submit that proves that you are a professional, take it seriously, and you'll show up to record, for instance, and not just be like, oh, I was up all night watching cartoons and I didn't make it in today.
So I'm curious, Dave, because of who G-Kids, you become this kind of worldwide phenomenon in independent animation. You get these great articles written about you. Do people submit demos to you?
They do.
Yeah.
I don't listen to them.
Well, I feel like you forwarded them to us before.
Have I?
Yeah.
Oh. Maybe I assumed that they sent them to the wrong person. I definitely. Yeah. To be honest, I haven't listened to. I don't think I listened to demos directly. I do. We basically get involved sort of at the last stage, and it was interesting to hear Stephanie describe her process, because I think I learned a little something, because by the time it gets to us, it really is down to the final 20 or so people per role, maybe. And that's more where we get involved in terms of trying to winnow out who we would like, especially for some of our more hands-on projects, certain projects that we feel really passionate about and we want to be directly involved. We'll have a larger hand to play in casting. There are other projects where they're very important to us, but we also sort of know that they're just going to be more in the wheelhouse of projects we've done before. So we just have them set up and say, we trust that, maybe just the lead couple roles you want to listen to, but everyone else, fill them out, according to who you think is best for the role. But generally, no, we don't keep like a stockpile of voices. I do notice that a lot of the same voices pop up here and there, and have started to think about them when we watch films and think about the voices that might work. But we aren't trying to take over direct casting stuff. I can't invite that in my life.
So typically the actor wouldn't send a distributor their demo. It's really doing the research and finding who's doing the casting for that project and go to that person.
Yeah, I think that's the most productive element. I mean, I'm not like blacklisting anyone for receiving an email that I wasn't expecting, but it's not gaining anyone the upper hand, I would say. It would be more productive if someone on our projects who are more directly involved with casting, like say Stephanie, were to come to us and say, I heard someone who would be really right for this. And then that is going to go so much further in our minds than someone reaching out sort of out of the blue. Because I just don't, I sort of trust the process in terms of just wanting to give creative power and everything to the team working on the projects, and step in only when I have to be like the big bad producer or executive or whatever. But the less meddling that we can directly do, I think that's what I'm trying to do with my life. I'm trying to get better. I mean, what we could tell started at the end of the beginning. I think each project we've done has been increasingly less meddling has been my goal. And you can ask Michael and Stephanie if that's actually true. But I feel like
I think that is true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think one dub took us a year and a half to do, and that was or a year or something. And
which one was it? Wrinkles?
Probably.
Can't be.
One where definitely the script sat on my computer for 6 months. And it's just that
7 people in the whole cast.
Well, I mean, it took a month just to discuss whether or not we could use the word flan. So.
You guys, well, steering it back a little bit, are there a group of agents that you typically will go to, or agencies, when you're trying to cast these particular roles, or do you cast a really wide net? Are there go-tos, or?
So when I do the independent features, I pretty much go to everybody in town, and sometimes depending on the character, I'll go out of town for it. For anime stuff, there's certain agents that won't read people for anime because it's a dubbing contract and it's a lot lower. And so sometimes I have to go to that agent and specifically request people to read, but they won't just blanket that. And I know, Stephanie, you had a good point about what do you do if your agent doesn't read for that?
So like Ned, you know, if it's a new media thing, like I'm doing something for Titmouse and Hasbro one and an Amazon Studios one, that is the new media contract, which is decent. So agents will, it's a blanket to all the agencies, they'll happily submit. But if it's like a foreign dubbing contract, FYI, maybe I should just get this out of the way in case anybody has illusions of grandeur.
Prepare to be amazed.
Illusions of wealth when it comes to a foreign language dubbing. Delusions? I don't know, whatever. The dubbing rate is $64.25 an hour with a 2-hour minimum, unlimited voices. That's what you're signing up for. Okay. If it is a broadcast, if it's a broadcast release first, there is, I think it's a $25 episode bump. So if you're doing multiple episodes in one session, you get a little bump for it. If it's a theatrical release, I think it's $84.75.
Yep.
It's $84.75 an hour. 2-hour minimum. That's if it's released theatrical first. That means it's in theaters before it's on DVD or home video. There is a residual structure, but depending on the distribution, because you're already talking it's foreign dubbing, it may or may not kick in. But because of that, there's a buyout rate, and the buyout is a plus 150% of your rate. So now, when you do those numbers and you factor in that your agent is only making 10%, this is why a lot of agencies do not care to have anything to do with foreign language dubbing. So that said, there are a few agents in town who are okay with it. That I like, maybe like 3 agents in town, you know, and the deal is they're like, it's low. They won't cull it. Like, they won't listen to it and edit it and only send me the best ones. They just send which one of their clients, because it's not worth their time. And I'm fine with that, you know, and they're fine with it. They're like, as long as my client's fine with that rate, whatever, I'll take $6 or what, I don't know, when it works out to be $10, you know what I mean? Because they're just helping their clients get work, you know, when you think about it. So if you have an agent, or when you get an agent, if it is work that you are interested in doing, I would suggest you let your agent know. Because even prior to doing this, when I first reached out to agents to cast for some foreign language dubbing, some of them were just like, yeah, no, we don't, that's just way too low for us. And then a few of them were like, I don't think you're gonna get anybody interested. We'll put it out there, you know. And they were like, wow, I'm surprised. all these actors want to work. Big surprise. So yeah, I would definitely suggest that you let your agents know that you are okay with that rate for, to work under that contract if anything comes across their desk.
And a lot of times, like, I have to convince the agent that the story's great and there's big potential for it. And even then, sometimes they don't read their people. So there's kind of a lot of groveling involved. Like, we really want this person, or like I'm personal friends with James Hong, the actor, and we did a little movie called The Monkey King last year. And because he's a friend, we were able to use him. And I had to ask favors to a lot of actors, and they all were willing to do it. And we recorded at Michael and Steph's place. And then the movie ended up being released in China and made $150 million in 3 weeks. Okay? It was the biggest animated feature produced in China, making the most money in that time frame. So because of it, we were able to hire Jackie Chan for the English version, and suddenly all these actors that did these favors for us were in a movie with Jackie Chan. And then, all of a sudden it's this kind of cool, thing to be a part of. So, as I always say, don't just turn things down just because the price is low. You never know where it's going to end up.
And sometimes if an agent won't send out your casting notice to their clients, but if you request somebody, either a direct booking, or if you request, or if I have just a specific person to read on it, they'll be okay with it as long as you say it's okay, So for like A Letter to Momo, we had Fred Tatasciore and Dana Snyder and Bob Bergen were all in it, but that's because we knew them and they were like, yeah, happy to work with you guys. So. And
there are overscale payments that we can sometimes do on our budget where we can add to it.
But generally, you have to be somewhat of some kind of history or reputation or name in order to say, like, can we get double scale? But double scale of what I've just described is still. Yeah.
Agent gets $12.
Nice.
And what if you don't have representation? Is there an avenue to get involved in independent animation features or into anime dubbing? And if so, please share.
I don't know a direct, obvious avenue. I would say it's kind of like who you know, it is.
Most of the stories I know of people that got in knew someone or knew someone that knew someone, and they were recommended. We do ask the people that we work with and trust if there are other people that they know that they want to recommend. That goes a long way to helping. Just getting a random email isn't fantastic, but also most of the ones I get aren't like knock it out of the park demos. If it is, I'll be like, well, that's great. I mean, and I'm a little more open than most people that I know, and I send everything to New York and make it part of the roster. And then from there, as we get auditions from them, we can sort out like who is completely wasting our time. It's a horrible thing to say. But I mean, with thousands and thousands of people submitting, like at some point you've got to truncate. So, I mean, but you have to have a demo first, at least for us.
The other cool thing is if you look like a character that's in an anime show, they may hire you because you look like them. Because at their big red carpet or black carpet events, they like the actors to walk out that look like their characters. So when we got David Boreanaz to be in Kingdom Hearts, is because he looked just like his character. So they loved it. So.
Oh, the Japanese side?
Yeah,
that makes sense, the Japanese side.
Or become a huge YouTube star.
Is that a thing? That's a thing now, too?
We've been asked, like, could we get some influencers on this? And I'm like, if they're good enough to do the role, why not? But not if they're not.
I think, honestly, like, if we're casting something that is foreign language dubbing, there's a huge pool of actors who do this that's in existence that are very good at it. It's done a long time, and it's very hard work. It's actually harder. It's less pay for more tricky work than other types of VO. That said, I'm always open to new people, but I don't always do like an open casting for each project. Generally, that happens when we run out of people, or for some reason it's a very fill-in-the-blank type heavy show, or it's a sequel of a thing, but they're not the same characters, and I can't use any of the actors, or I need something very specific, a very specific sound, somebody who can speak a certain language or do a certain accent and stuff like that. So if you have any of those special skills, that's good that's a good like foray into it. The other thing too is that I know for like at least myself and Michael, we are really trying our best to have better diversity representation, even when it comes to foreign language dubbing. So we'll sometimes do a self-imposed, we need an Indian woman for this part, even though the character doesn't have to have an Indian accent, doesn't have to, we'll do our best to try to cast ethnically appropriate for the parts that come up, and that's also like a kind of like a good way. And I would say, because it is so much word of mouth, is that like you just put it out in your universe, like tell your agents, tell your friends, if you know a friend who works in that field, let them know, hey, I'm an actor, I'm interested in doing it. And starting out as being an actor, and also being a SAG actor is already kind of like you've kind of been vetted. You're not just like every other person who also just wants to get started in voiceover.
How important is the ADR aspects of animation? We talked about this backstage as well, and understanding that process.
Teaching class.
Yeah, it's really huge, because you're taking the Japanese words or Chinese, whatever language we're dubbing, and you have to hire a great adapter. Stephanie, I hire all the time for this, right? So we have the Japanese Chinese that get translated, but then sometimes it's really clunky and it doesn't match the lip movement. So then Stephanie will go and she'll rewrite it to make it flow. And sometimes we hire Hollywood comedy writers to make it funny in there, but you want a flowing script. And then the actor has to be able to, match the lip sync and have a smooth performance, so it doesn't look like it's choppy or like a Godzilla movie or something like that. So it really helps to have a skill in ADR, especially with foreign language, because if you have the Japanese in your headphones, it's kind of hard to act that way. So you kind of have to watch the lip sync and then do the English. And then we often have the writers in the sessions, so that if it just doesn't quite flow, we'll actually change the dialogue right there on the spot.
It's really important, because there's not huge budgets for these things, and everything is by money. The actor gets paid by the hour, the studio gets rented by the hour, lots of times the director's there by the hour. So the better you are at ADR, the faster you go, the more happy everybody is with you.
Because the production is paid a lump sum per running minute, basically. So they have to get it all done no matter how many or few characters are involved.
They don't get to bill back, oh, we spent this many hours on it. They just have this budget to do it. But that said, there are more and more people teaching classes in ADR. Sometimes they're hard to find, but like that's I would definitely look into that.
Yeah, well, you all know we do them here as well. So if you see an ADR class, jump in. That's a good opportunity. This is for Dave. Dave, from a distributor's point of view, how important is the celebrity when trying to put together packages for distribution in your projects?
Yeah, I think it really depends on the project. I think we've been fortunate enough to, under foreign dubbing contracts, mind you, work with some really talented folks. And we've had a really great cast on quite a few films. Worked with Paul Giamatti several times, Nick Offerman. Lauren Bacall had her final role in Ernest Celestine. I'm forgetting about a million people.
Forrest Whitaker, William H. Macy. Yeah. And so I think, for us, obviously, it really helps in terms of where it helps most, I would say, is when you have a concept or a film that really feels like it would be elevated by the presence of actors and of celebrity or note, and just drawing attention to films that people might otherwise not be predisposed to see. We worked on this film that was referenced earlier, which was Wrinkles, which was an Alzheimer's drama comedy, which is a little bit of a tough subject. And I think the fact that it happened to star Martin Sheen in the foreign dubbed version maybe helped provide just a little bit of a way in for people to say, oh, this normally, I'm not sure this would be exactly for me, but that's certainly if he was involved with it, then it must be good, or it must be something worth seeing. So we often use that as some kind of calling card, I would say, in terms of just trying to show for films that are often
I guess already outside the Hollywood system and independent in structure, trying to give them a better commercial chance to succeed. That said, we don't cast influencers or other kind of people yet. I mean, I think at the heart of it, I'm really predisposed to working with good actors, be they celebrities or not. And I think that we don't necessarily cast based on pure name status or anything like that. So.
What was great about Ernest and Celestine is the story was so rich that a lot of the celebrities are willing to bring their prices down because of kind of the script, and also, Dave, it already had won a lot of awards for a couple of years, right? So people already knew.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of our films have played. Maybe they premiered their foreign version at Cannes or played the Toronto Film Festival or other kind of prestigious sort of festival paths, and have started gaining traction. And we've had now really great relationships with agents who I think probably would not necessarily give the time of day to other foreign dubbing projects, but sort of recognize that when we come knocking, it's really about their clients have said they really enjoyed working on these films because they have kids, or they just really loved the work, both in terms of how much fun ADR-VO can be, besides also being frustrating at times, and also just how meaningful they found their pieces. It's really, I think, gratifying for people who are used to playing certain types of characters to be sort of thrown into an unusual situation and be able to test themselves in a way that maybe being repeatedly typecast in a live action production doesn't. So
when Vincent D'Onofrio came in last year, he made a point of letting me know. He's like, the only reason I'm here is because I saw what you did on Cat in Paris, and my whole family loved it. Just so you know, that's the only reason I'm here. And I was like, it's not all that sweet. He's like, and William Macy said that he and his wife read the Gabrielle Vincent books of Ernest and Celestine to their daughter. So.
And then Christian Bale was such a big fan of Miyazaki that even though his wife was about to deliver their baby, he came to do Howl's Moving Castle with knowing he might have to leave any second. So for 2 days, we thought we might lose him, and then we'd have to pick it up later on. But he was such a fan that he was willing to do it. So. And
then awkward, he had the Batman and the Howl's premiere
we had him the premiere of Batman and Howl's across the street from each other, and guess which one he went to? It's Batman, right? So.
I'm Howl. Oh, Howl.
Yes. Yeah.
Have you met Hayao? I mean, is he still? Did he retire? He's back, or what's this? That he's back. Right?
Miyazaki is back. We'll see.
A master animator,
I'll
right?
believe it when the film is out.
Yeah, exactly.
And Dave, another thing also. So, how long typically before a release that's foreign? What's the process in terms of how you decide what you're going to then dub into English for other markets and things like that? What's the time frame generally?
On our side, we try to get involved earlier and earlier, just because the process can be stressful, especially when it's under duress. So the more time that we have to think about is the more time that we can involve original writers and directors in the decision-making process, the more time that we have to adequately sort through auditions, more time that we have to just do everything to achieve the quality that we want. That said, we have gone from acquiring a film to dubbing it in probably a couple of months, I think, is the shortest turnaround. But ideally, I would like, I'm sure Michael and Stephanie would like more time, but I personally like at least 6 to 8 months, I think, in terms of when we start seeing a project versus when it has to be in a theater, because not just the time to literally finish the dub, but then the time to use the materials that we've created to create new English trailers, to create new English edited versions or other kind of things that we need to create just to release the movie in all of its various formats. That clock doesn't start just until the literal dub is delivered. And sometimes that can be right down to the wire.
But from the time that you see or receive the project isn't necessarily when it's released, right? I mean, you get to see things before it comes out.
Oh, right. Yeah, we try to see things earlier and earlier. And sometimes we see things at their festival premiere, which is the first time anyone has seen them. more often than not. Now with a lot of Japanese anime projects, we're starting to read scripts and see earlier stories. They generally production companies in Japan can be very, very tight-lipped about sharing materials. They'll show you like 5 seconds of footage. I'm still kicking myself, and Michael and Stephanie know the story, but Your Name, we were attempted to bid on the Japanese film Your Name, which is a fantastic anime. You should all see it. If you haven't already, see it twice. And this was like a month prior to it being released, and they wouldn't let us see anything but like a 30-second teaser and a poster. And the question was like, well, that's not really a great feel for what the film is like, so you kind of have just to gamble sometimes, and that was a decision that I reached this day. But as long as we can see the featured film, the finished film, I think we can start thinking about the dubs pretty quickly, and really like to get them into production as soon as we can.
Excellent, thank you. So, kind of in closing, any parting words, advice for actors that are, what should you pay attention to as an actor if you want to get into this stuff? What's important? What are the keys? I know it's a really broad question, but still. Yeah. Come on. How do we do it?
Ooh, me first. I would say we talked a lot about sort of the basics of acting that should translate into the work you do, but also the auditions you submit. If there were a trick, which I don't believe in, but if you're listening to thousands of auditions in a row, a couple things. One, I used to be very on the it doesn't matter what the sound quality is like bandwagon. I was like, I know it's not what it's going to sound like when you come to my fancy studio with our great German mics, if you do it from home. That said, when you're listening to thousands of auditions in a row, you're not doing yourselves any favors if you record in a hallway. Also, there was some weird stuff I heard. This is mostly from some people from New York. It sounded like they added reverb to their audition, which was really weird and distracting. Just make it sound, the level matters. Usually in anything that you record in, you can use a normalize function to make it just go to as loud as it can be, rather than record it too loud so that it distorts. Sound quality, poor sound quality won't help you. We want to hear what you really sound like. Don't worry about overproducing it. Just make it clean and make it loud. That actually, I think, matters when you get ear fatigue after, the first 1,500, and then you have another 3,500. So that's one thing. Also, Stephanie talked a lot about being specific, and I think when I hear something that makes me wake up and take notice, it's not because of the voice. It's because I hear history. Something that we talk about a lot when we're directing, I know, is proximity. I sort of came to this when I was a Ninja Turtle. I remember doing a scene, and I just thought, well, Raph's down here training, and Mikey's up in the mezzanine level reading comic books. And when I talked to one and then the other, it just sort of changed the way I projected, and my intention was further away. So there's a sound of people sitting and narrating, and then there's the moving around, walking and talking. If people sound active, I feel like that really helps me think of them in terms of animation. Do you know what I mean? And it's sort of a mental choice to be moving around and thinking about how far away people are from you. And those are all kinds of specificity that, for me, make me pay attention to someone's audition more.
That's excellent. I think, kind of going on that, I know when I'm casting, I want to hear the character. I don't want to hear the actor reading the character. I want them to become the character. And so there's a smoothness to it. Like if there's active, I want to feel the energy. And also with quality, sometimes I give people the benefit of the doubt. I'm thinking, okay, they don't have a place to record quality, and there was a problem. So I'll kind of give them a shot, right? In all the years I've done this, they've never gotten to the callback round. Even though I sometimes try, I'm like, okay, I'm going to just include them in the next round. They never make it because there's something about the quality level where their acting doesn't quite get to where it needs to be, which is interesting. So it's
or maybe
really
you just
going
can't
for that
hear it.
I don't know.
You know what I mean? Like, because you're not picking up the subtleties of the voice. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not going to talk a lot about gear, but it's a tangential thing slightly. It's not really about buying expensive equipment. I think the most important thing you can do for your recording is the environment you record in. So get into a closet or just put something up so that it's deadened. If it's live and echoey and splashy, that's going to ruin the sound more. I have absolutely submitted auditions on my iPhone using the built-in mic, not even an Apogee or whatever you can plug into it. But I always make sure I'm somewhere where it's going to be filtered. Hang a jacket up. I've done auditions from airports. She was crafty at Disneyland once. That's your own story to tell. Remember?
What did I do? I don't remember. Oh, yeah.
But
I got a
environment, yes.
last minute audition. I was at Disneyland from my agent, and
not the quietest place on earth.
no, I was like going everywhere. I couldn't find, I couldn't figure out where to go. So then I faked an injury because they have a medical, there's like a little, there's a clinic, and then you can go in there, and then they just let me in my own room, and then I shut the door and I did my audition and I left.
Pretty resourceful.
I did it on my phone. I don't even remember what it was for. Yeah.
But I'm sure you booked it.
I don't even know if I booked it, but there was one time I was at JFK and I couldn't find a quiet, so I found an elevator. And I literally was riding the elevator up and down. There was only 2 floors. And people come in, I would just stop, and then I would come in, and then I had to like edit it all out. But yeah, it's more about. It's definitely more about the environment. My preferred method is, I mean, when I'm home, it's my home studio. But if I'm traveling, I don't like, people. Some voice actors, they get these like crazy mics and stuff. And my experience is that a really good mics, like they pick up a lot of stuff that I don't want picked up. But my phone mic is made to cancel background noise, because how can you have a conversation with somebody if they can't hear what you're saying, So I actually prefer my phone mic. The only difference is you have to be careful with like plosives and wind,
So don't go right in front of you, go to the side. So you can kind of do this with the phone. The other thing is the first time I used my phone for an audition, I booked it. And the fun thing was I was just walking around the place. It was a quiet, my home, and it had stuff hung up to be kind of quiet. But I was walking around. So I was literally walking and talking, and I think that gave it a different kind of life. Sometimes in a hotel, I'll take the foldy thing for your suitcase, I'll put it under the covers to make a pop tent, and then I'll kneel down in front of it. But then I'm like getting in a weird position. I'm like, okay, I'm going to audition here. And I'm like, ooh, it's not really ergonomic or good for how you create sound. But you can put it on a desk too, but the bed's the quietest. Sometimes that's if I'm having to do pickups for a job, and they're like, you're halfway around the world. We need the line yesterday. Let's do it. I have a friend that did that from a Target changing room. Yeah, and it ran on Adult Swim.
Yeah.
So I would just say, in terms of like little notes or whatever about it, like it's definitely more about the acting and about the character choice. The other thing is like do your research. Even if you're talking specifically anime, we talked about like not trying to make an anime sound. There are different types of styles and tones in anime as well. If you were going out for an on camera, if you were going and reading for a procedural, or you would watch at least one episode of the show to figure out what the tone is, because your acting style would be a little bit different. Same is applicable for voiceover, and this is not just for independent animation. If you can find a trailer, watch the trailer, get a sense for the timing and the flow and how natural is it, or how how subdued it, how heightened or cartoony is it. Same with if I'm auditioning for something on Nickelodeon versus something that's on Cartoon Network, I would give 2 very different reads. But the acting and the choices and the character choices still need to be there. In terms of talking about like positioning and body positioning, if you can't tell for yourself every line of your audition what your character is doing physically, and I don't even mean if like there's an obvious action on the dialogue, I mean how are they standing? What is their body position? If you don't know in your mind and you can't imagine it, you haven't made that character alive enough for you. You're just reading, you're just what's on the page. Take it off the page. Don't be afraid to add ums and ahs and laughs and things and action in it, because that's what makes it pop and bring it alive. Don't add them just to add them for the sake of adding them, but don't, like, a lot of actors are just like the words on the page and they're perfectly articulate, and that's a very sterile sound.
Yeah. Don't deny the impulse. And the last technical thing I'll say is, if you're going to use your phone, it might also be for Android, but I know on iPhone at least, there's an app called Twisted Wave. The good thing about Twisted Wave is you can record the whole thing, you can also edit, and you can also convert it to MP3 or whatever format at whatever bit rate, and you can email from there. A lot of the apps will let you record and or edit and or convert, but this lets you do all of it, including sending it to an FTP or your Dropbox. And my new thing I just figured out yesterday, because I'm dumb, is because you can't always attach it to the email, you can attach a link, and Twisted Waves lets you do that. Then the agent has to click on it, and or you can send it to your iCloud, and then you can actually attach an iCloud file to your email if you're doing everything from your mobile device. But Twisted Wave is great. It's $20, and it covers all the areas. Editing's very easy, and there's YouTube videos to see how to even use the thing. But being able to export in the right format matters too, because I've had a lot of people less technical than we are, receive M4Vs instead of MP3s, and it's about the same thing. The file size is small, but one only plays on like Apple devices, and it's a pain in the butt.
Good deal. All right. Well, thank you so much. Our panel, yes, appreciate it. Stephanie Sheh, Michael Sinterniklaas, got it. Ned Lott and Dave Justice. Thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Be good.
All right. Thank you.